On today's build showcase, we're gonna be throwing shields and being quite efficient about it. Okay, so first things first, no, this is not a build guide, not yet at least. I know this may come up as clickbait and lazy content, but hear me out, okay? The reason as to why this is not a guide is due to the fact that the next Friday Blight League begins and there may be changes to the way the build behaves. I cannot commit fully to making a guide about the character yet, but you can expect my guide on this particular character if after the patch notes drop the build doesn't get gutted. I don't think Spectral Shield Throw is gonna get nerfed, but that doesn't mean that everything else about the way I've built the character is gonna stay the same. Even then, I wanted to share the way the character behaves because I feel like he ended up being very competent and efficient, and with a video about him you may get an idea of what you can do with this guy should you attempt something similar in the future. Second thing, I began this build on the last week of Legion. I skipped the entire league and came back last week. I'm kinda annoyed at myself for skipping the league because the mechanic is enjoyable and it looks like the league was very profitable. But also because at this point in Legion's lifespan, it's pretty difficult to get a character going when you don't really have currency to play with. But at the same time, the trade website is already a complete mess. Either everything is god awful expensive, or the things I'm looking for are not available anymore. But you can get some mileage out of crafting your own stuff, which I ended up committing to, but that doesn't mean that the build became super cheap. The challenge of getting the guy going was present since the beginning. So let's talk about the character, but first let's cover leveling. To level this guy, surprisingly, I didn't have that difficult of a time. I took Shield Throw at level 12, slapped Tabula, and then used Scouting Halt until I was level 30. Then I swapped to Titusius Span. From there, I swapped to Mute Wind Pennant at level 42, and I didn't take it off until level 66, where I equipped my first Cardinal Round Shield. For weapons, I used a Tempestuous Steel and I didn't take that off until I began mapping. Now let's talk about what's going on. In the endgame, I'm playing a chieftain that is converting all physical damage to fire. Our main source of physical damage is the shield. A Spectral Shield Throw benefits from having a very thick shield because the higher the defenses are on it, the bigger damage bonus it gets. Personally, I prefer evasion and armor as these bases can roll with some very interesting modifiers, but a shield with more than 2.5k armor/evasion or a mix of the two is pretty much GG and the best thing you can get. I'm using one that is not precisely godly, but it's pretty good and it's getting the job done, though I personally prefer to have one with larger defenses. For the weapon choice, we're using a Shaper stat stick. We're mostly looking for gain percentage of physical damage as extra fire damage and enemies killed explode. I don't know about you, but whenever I'm playing Path of Exile, I need enemies exploding on death. There is a lot of undead effects from enemies and I'd rather not deal with them at all. Plus, the enemy detonations are pretty satisfying to hear, so that's why I chose to use this modifier on my mace. I'm also using a Mark of Submission to curse enemies, mainly because the Shaper Elder Rings do not roll elemental weakness nor projectile weakness, and it's a fat DPS gain, so I might as well commit to a ring that only applies curses on hit and that's it. Another important thing to talk about is the unique Yule, Divide and Conquer. I wasn't expecting much of it since I was clearing okay during leveling, but do not skip the Yule. It is truly one of the best things about the build. I didn't believe that it was gonna be this good, but since I started using it, I did not take it off. The clear potential goes through the roof once you socket this in. Do not skip on it, I swear to the Lord, it is great and it really makes the build a lot more satisfying to play with. Okay, so I'll cover the skills and tree on another video. The reason being, I think I can squeeze more performance out of this guy. Yes, I was semi-complaining or pointing out a couple of hurdles about the economy a couple minutes ago, but that doesn't mean I'm giving up. The league has 4 days left, and I think I can experiment with a thing or two before that happens. Okay, so enough overall build analysis. It's time to talk about the meat. And the meat is very interesting. He hits hard, he clears fast, and the boss damage is not precisely bad, but I could use faster kills. However, it's hilarious when there are 2 bosses in a map because the shield throw bounces between them and I swear it deletes them. So far I haven't had any issues clearing maps, but avoid reflect like the plague. Do not even try. Seriously, it's a free death every single time you attack anything during a reflect map. Besides that, sometimes the game doesn't feel like leeching mana despite the damage we're dealing, and your character may cry about it. I'm pretty sure this mana leech problem is being caused by dissing, but I'm not 100% sure. Your experience with this may vary, so be wary of that. Besides that, in general, the character has potential and I intend to push him a little bit more during these last Legion days. Anyways, I wanted to make a build guide about this man, but I cannot do it until I see the patch notes. So fingers extra crossed that he doesn't get wrecked by the nerfs or changes coming next week. I'm excited for that league. Blight is gonna be pretty fun to play around with, and I got a couple of ideas for builds, but again, I cannot plan for them until we get the patch notes. I may even reprise this guy, but it all depends on what happens next week. So yeah, expect a new video sometime soon though, may not even be about Path of Exile, considering that we're still waiting for the patch notes and the release of the new league for next Friday. So that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching, make sure you subscribe, you comment, you rate, you follow me on Twitter and on Twitch, and make sure you tune in next time when we discover if this build was worth the time I invested into it. Peace!